How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we have a lot to break down in our latest Breaking Mets news segment to get into from news that has dropped over the past couple hours at the time of recording this, having everything to do with Jesse Winker's replacement. As we know, Jesse Winker is likely facing at least a 10-day IL stint, sustaining an oblique injury in the one play that he made in the outfield yesterday for his first game in the outfield all of 2025, because of course, that's just our luck, unfortunately. But we do have some news here as to who they're calling up, and no, it's not John Singleton, nor is it Jared Young, which really had me by surprise, folks. Yes, it's going to be Brett the Hitman Baty. He's coming back up to this Mets team, so we'll get into how Baty has fared in AAA Syracuse, what we could potentially be getting from him at the major league level, and ultimately, why did the Mets make the decision to favor Baty over other guys there in the farm? And speaking of the farm, everybody, we have some key news on the prospect front, as arguably the best pitching prospect in the organization, with the exception of guys like Brandon Sproat and Jonathan. Noah McLean is finally moving up to AAA Syracuse, and I'm ecstatic as a Mets fan to get into that, because McLean has been nothing short of masterful so far this year in AA Binghamton with the Rummel Ponies, and we're going to get into ultimately his immediate upside that we're going to see at the AAA level, and how long it might be before he inevitably impacts the Mets, maybe just as soon as this season. So thank you guys kindly for smashing like and subscribe on as your first chime in. It's greatly appreciated, and please let me know all of your initial reactions in the comments down below. How do you feel about Brett Baty back with this Mets team, McLean being moved up to Syracuse, and us getting set for a big 3-game set that begins later on this evening against the Arizona Diamondbacks? And I also want to give a huge shout out to today's video sponsor, as always, at SeatGeek, because SeatGeek has you covered with all your ticketing needs, everybody. They are the number one rated ticketing app in the game for a reason, with over 70,000 active events to choose from, folks. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. And what I love so much about SeatGeek that I've relayed in the past and will continue to do so, and I'm so happy to have them here as our official ticketing sponsor on the WardyNYM platform all season long. Folks, just take a look what you guys see beside me. It is, of course, their grading scale and system here. You guys will see on a scale of 1 to 10 in the SeatGeek app, they're going to rate your tickets based on the value, best bang for your buck. So if it's closer, say 7 to 10 range in the green, that means they're a great bang for your buck, and you should hammer those tickets. But if it's more in the 1 to 5 range and more so in the red, then it's not a great bang for your buck. You're probably overspending for how much those tickets are actually worth, and you're better off getting tickets elsewhere, still there in the SeatGeek app. That is really separated themselves from the rest, of my opinion. That's why I've been long using the SeatGeek app well before they became an official sponsor on the platform, folks. And if you guys want to get 10% off your next ticket purchase for Mets tickets, especially with a big homestand coming up not long from now against the Chicago Cubs, which I will be in attendance for games May 9th and the 11th, so excited to see many Mets fans there. Head over to SeatGeek, everybody, by clicking that link down below in the description and utilizing our promo code WARDY10. Again, that is WARDY10, and that way you will get a 10% off your next ticket purchase, whether it's for Mets tickets, concert show tickets, comedy show tickets, you name it, SeatGeek has you covered. And shout out to them once more for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. But folks, let's get right into this, and let's start with some news I actually want to share that's separate from all this. And this is really just a further shout out to someone who's done a very rock solid job on the beat for the Mets the past number of years now, and that's Tim Healy out of Newsday. As many of you guys know, Tim Healy has been one of the more notorious beat writers for the Mets, including guys like Anthony DiComo, Will Salmon, Pat Ragazzo, just to name a few, not to undermine anyone else. Those are just some names that popped in my head right away, and there's good reason, because Tim Healy has done a very credible job over the past number of years covering the Mets on the beat, but that is coming to an end after this week, as he's going to be going back to New England to cover the team that he grew up idolizing, that being in the Boston Red Sox, as he's going to be officially on the beat for the Red Sox for the Boston Globe there beginning in June. So I want to further shout out Tim Healy. Thank you so much for all the great coverage you did the past couple of years. Seriously, he has been an absolute pleasure not only to meet and chop it up with in person in spring training over the past couple of years, but an even better writer who's done some fantastic work that we have cited on the platform plenty since we started here 5 years ago now. So wishing Tim and his family all the best in their future endeavors. But now let's get into what is happening with the Mets and all this call-up news. And let's start here with the one that shouldn't be too shocking, but I gotta be honest, I was a little surprised, and here's why. Brett Baty officially gets the call back up with this Mets team, and let me expand on the context here, because we dropped a video that dropped in the AM today, 10 a.m. Eastern, for our Big Mets Updates videos, per usual. That's usually around the time that we drop them when I record them the late night, the night prior, usually after a Mets win or loss, and at the time, Anthony DiComo's writing had me thinking that Brett Baty wasn't going to be the guy the Mets would consider, so I'm going to throw Anthony under the bus a little bit. I'm joking as I say this, but I only favor favored Singleton and Young to the extent that I did in our video that dropped this morning, because everything in Tacoma's writing was having me believe that Baty wasn't really going to be considered because he hasn't played the past 3 or 4 games in AAA there because he's had a sore right big toe. So kind of bizarre, but no less, he's healed up, he's good now, and he gets the call with this Mets team. So Singleton and Jared Young are guys that the Mets may consider at another point in the season, but it's not going to happen yet, as clearly they like the upside from the left side of the plate for Baty, and also want to continue to give Baty opportunities because they know that he's a guy that they can utilize in platoon situations. And now that Winker's not on the roster, they actually have a more valid reason than prior when they had McLean on the team too, to have another lefty bat in this lineup there and getting some field work. And the best thing about having Baty up, in my opinion, isn't even as much of the bat to ball skills, because he'll prove it. You know, he had a tank against Zach Wheeler, and I was in attendance for that game, for his final game with the Mets so far this season just a couple weeks ago. But it's the defense that really stands out so much to me for Brett Baty. I've loved what I've seen from him at the hot corner, obviously. At second base, he's been proficient for the most part, and he's a guy that I can see the Mets deferring to later in the ball game in certain pinch defensive situations, right? Especially if, say, Vientos doesn't have the sharpest game. Maybe you want to put Baty in there by the time you get to the 7th or 8th inning there to handle the hot corner and get an at-bat or so. Or maybe you want to have Baty come in as a pinch runner, as he's a fine runner. He's not going to be Luis Angel Acuna fast, but as you see from the highlights there, he can steal a bag or two. Baty's a very versatile player. He has a lot of tools, but he has just struggled mightily to find consistency at the major league level. And we all know he has consistency at the minor league level because it only, what was it, like 10 plate appearances so far this season with AAA Syracuse. He's batting .300 with 3 RBIs and an .864 OPS. So a very limited sample size, but still a productive one when he was out there. In the case of Brett the Hitman Baty, Brett the Met, Brett Bonds, Brett Schmuck, whatever you want to call Brett Baty is fine by me. But I'm here to tell you that Brett Baty does in fact get the call over John Singleton, over Jared Young, over Drew Gilbert, over Celestino, over Billy McKinney, and there is reasons why. And the obvious reasons are that, one, the Mets love the upside that Baty has to be utilized in various situations, right? He's not a guy that's going to be stubbornly just in a position where he's only DHing and that lefty-right platoon with Marte. I guarantee you that we will see Baty get at least one start probably in the infield, if not multiple, and you will see him come in late game replacement and probably multiple situations, if not at least 1 or 2, because Baty has the upside to obviously drive a ball out every once in a while and hopefully find consistency in his game to actually be productive here, especially if he's going to be facing mainly right-handed pitching. Now, you don't love that for the immediate development of the kid, but at the same time, he's 25 years of age, and the only reason why he's up right now is because of an injury happening. So you got to deal with the cards that are dealt. And in the case of the Mets and what the cards that are dealt right now is a limited opportunity for Brett Baty to go out and try to prove himself again up until Jesse Winker returns. Because then when that happens, depending on how Baty is utilized and how versatile he is, that'll put the Mets in a good position to debate further as to who should stay on the roster between himself and Jose Ascar. If, say, hypothetically, Jeff McNeil gets a solid amount of reps in left and or center field over the next, 10 to 15 days, and that seems to work while giving Baty some infield work and Acuna getting daily reps, and Vientos getting reps between third base and DH based on matchup, maybe put Nimmo in DH every once in a while based on matchup too to just get the night off of his legs and have McNeil in left. There are so many different routes the Mets can go with their infield and outfield configuration, and that's a good thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do here, and I'm happy to see Brett Baty back with this Mets team, because not that this is a slight on Singleton or Young, but I think we can all agree that when it comes to a talent that potentially has the highest upside still, it's hard to not see Baty potentially still having the highest upside of them all. He's the best defensive player out of the group that we just talked about. He obviously is the youngest player out of the group, and he has shown promise and flashes, but they have just been so few and far in between that we're waiting to see it fully click and have him be a mainstay at the major league level, because we know he's probably too good for AAA. Every single time he goes down to Syracuse, the guy's an absolute menace. So what Baty does at the major league level, again, has yet to be seen, but it's encouraging to see the Mets going back to the kid here and the immediate call-up over some of the more grizzled veteran options in the minor leagues, because it tells you that they still view Baty as that first man to call up, especially if a lefty batter is going down. So Mets fans, I would love to hear from you guys. How do you feel about Brett Baty being officially called back up with this Mets team, and what is your expectation for him as we head into that big 3-game series beginning late night, 9:40 p.m. Eastern tonight against the Arizona Diamondbacks? Also, just an FYI, everybody, solid chance chance that I'll be live just for post-game. Probably won't do pre-game today, and I'll be transparent. My New York Knicks are playing game 1 there against the Celtics in Boston, and even if we get absolutely hosed, I want to watch that game because I haven't had the pleasure as a diehard Knicks fan to watch many playoff basketball so far because they've completely aligned with every Mets game. So I actually appreciate the fact that tonight's a late night game, knowing that the Knicks play at 7 and this game doesn't start until basically a quarter to 10. So I will be busy watching that, and then I will be covering the Knicks, not the Knicks game, the Mets game, as soon as it's done tonight. Win, lose, or draw. And the only way I don't go live tonight is if it's, say, an absolute clunker of a game. There's really nothing to talk about, and I'm going to have little to no viewers at north of 1 a.m., and I much rather just recap the game the next morning in our Big Mets update segment. So just relaying that now, so that way you guys aren't absolutely shocked if you're like, I waited until 1 a.m. and Wardy isn't here. Well, I'm sorry. If we're losing a 1-0 ball game and the boys barely get on base or something, I'm not going to go out my way to cover it that late night when I know it could do the same to the same amount of eyes to check it out the following morning. But going on now, everybody, from Brett Baty, back with this Mets team, back on this roster. Now let's get into a guy that I'm just so excited to break down. I mean, I'm feeling giddy right now talking about Mr. Nolan McLean, because this is finally happening, everybody. I mean, lock in. If you guys don't know Nolan McLean, you're going to know him soon enough. And I have been very grateful to learn a lot more about Nolan this past year. I'll be completely honest, guys. I am not, a huge buff when it comes to the prospect space. This is something that I've really dabbled a lot more into the past year and a half, especially with our Big Mets updates videos we drop every morning. It's further incentivized me, not only as a fan, but especially as someone who loves my Mets, to really be deep diving the farm on a nightly basis. And doing that has really kept me a lot more up to date with everyone on the offensive end, everyone on the pitching end. And Nolan McLean, I've been following every single start he's had so far this year, and the guy just absolutely nails. In 26.1 innings, he has over a 10 K per nine to just over 4 walks per nine. So the walk rate could use some work. A 2.79 FIP, 30 strikeouts, and a 1.37 ERA so far for the Rumble Ponies. And look at that sweeper. It's nasty. I love his arsenal. I love everything that Nolan McLean brings to the table for this Mets team. And he's a guy that some believe has the highest upside out of anybody there on the pitching front for this Mets team when looking at prospects. Even higher than Brandon Sproat, higher than Jonathan. Whether that'll hold true in the end, that is yet to be seen. But what we do know is that Nolan McLean has proven everything, literally everything, at the minor league level. And we just talked about him in his previous start a couple nights ago, where he had another rock-solid outing there for the Rumble Ponies. I said it is not going to be long before he gets promoted, especially the way that David Stearns has been oh so aggressive and calling up guys in the minor leagues from either St. Lucie to then the Cyclones to the Rumble Ponies, or the Rumble Ponies to Syracuse. We've already seen a boatload of early call-ups for guys so far this year in the minor leagues itself, and that's because they're being positively rewarded for what they're doing there with their on-field product. And we're not just letting them sit and rot all year in the minor leagues because they're in the minor leagues. We actually have a developmental system going on where, okay, we're going to reward you if you consistently show us that you deserve to belong in a level that is higher than what you're currently pitching at or playing in. So Nolan McLean, what I love so much about him is more so on the story, right? The Mets drafted him a couple years ago under Billy Epler when he was deemed Cowboy Ohtani, because at the time, coming out of OSU, he was a rock-solid hitter and a pitcher. But after his first year or so there in the Mets organization, they completely deviated away from him being a hitter and focused solely on the pitching, because they know how good the stuff is, and clearly it's showcasing in a big way so far that we're seeing for the Rumble Ponies this season, everybody. So Mets fans, I definitely want to hear from you. How are you feeling about Nolan McLean getting the call for this Mets team? And when I say call, not for the actual Mets yet, but we're getting oh so close, because what this means is that by getting Nolan McLean actually up to Syracuse, this is now the final step before we see this man have himself already at the major league level. Nolan McLean is a guy that very well could be in the major leagues by the time that we get into, mid to late in summer this season, right? It's going to pretty much be a battle between himself, Brandon Sproat, Blade Tidwell to a certain degree. Then you look at the Don Waddells of the world, who are more so on the Brandon Waddells, rather, that are not necessarily prospects, but are arms in AAA that have been productive when they've been called upon. Justin Hageman, etc. The Mets are going to be considering various guys as innings eaters and also guys that have plus stuff. And McLean might just have some of the best stuff out of everybody here. Again, this is going to be an absolute weapon for the Mets that they're getting right now, because when you look at the arsenal especially, he's got that four seam that sits, again, mid to high 90s there, which is fantastic. So he can be pumping high 90s on the gun anytime out there. He's got that mid 80s sweeping slider with a spin rate over 3,000 RPM, which is just absolutely disgustingly good. And he has over more than 20 inches of horizontal movement. He's got the cutter, the curveball, and the changeup in the back pocket too. So he's got a true 5-pitch arsenal that we're working with that could play up at the major league level, and a sweeper that many believe in the organization to quite literally be one of, if not the better pitches among all pitchers in the Mets farm entirely heading into the season. They were speaking glowingly of him that we saw in the MLB pipeline reports leading into spring training than the regular season. And now here we are today, everybody. Noah McLean, one step closer to making his MLB debut with the Mets, which honestly, I kind of expect to happen at this season at this rate, because unless McLean looks very inconsistent the way that Brandon Sproat still has at the Syracuse level, all McLean needs to do is to have some consistency, and from there, it won't be long before he gets the call, right? Kristen Scott, for example, need to get more in the groove of consistency, and once he got that, and Syracuse is like, okay, it's time to give him the call. Sadly, Scott is still rehabbing from Tommy John surgery, but he's a guy that should be impacting this rotation potentially as soon as next season. And in the case of McLean, Sproat, these guys are now going to battle it out to see which pitching prospect will best the other to get the call first there at the major league level. Because let's also not forget, Blades Hidwell only got the call because Brandon Sproat wasn't aligned there on his from his previous start. He would have been short on rest. McLean wasn't at the Syracuse level yet, and Blades Hidwell was perfectly aligned, while Justin Hagman just went down on the injured list in the minor leagues when the Mets probably would have considered him first. So, again, multiple dominoes had to fall for Blades Hidwell to eventually get the call up for his MLB debut. And he gave up 6 earned runs in 3.2 innings and allowed 9 hits, had a couple strikeouts, a touch 98 on the gun, which was nice, but still very raw and a lot more work to do. McLean looks like he has a complete arsenal to come up and impact this Mets team as soon as this season. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. How do you feel about Noah McLean, formerly known as Cowboy Ohtani? Now we're just going to call him an absolute stud of a pitching prospect to see what he can do now at the Syracuse level. But before we get out of here, everybody, let me relay once more the Arizona Diamondbacks series preview we have beginning tonight. Because I did mention our video that dropped earlier in the AM, but honestly, there really isn't a purpose for you to check out that video now unless you want to learn more about John Singleton and Jared Young, who are not being called up by the Mets right now. And that is just a reality. Sometimes when you think you're going to have it right with what a call-up is going to be, and you're wrong. And again, I really thought that Brett Baty was going to be the leading option until I read Tacoma's article that completely had me thinking otherwise. So take with that however which way that you want to. But game one we have tonight, Griffin Canning facing off against Ryan Nelson. Ryan Nelson and his just under 6 ERA faces off Griffin Canning, who's 4-1 on the season with a 2.61 ERA. And then as we get into game two, Zach Gallen, the New Jersey native who did very well against the Mets in his previous start this past week at Citi Field, him and his sub-5 ERAs facing off against David Pearson, who's 2-1 on the season with 3.06 ERA. Then we get on to the final game of the series, a 3:40 p.m. Eastern start. The veteran right-hander Merrill Kelly and his 4 ERA, a 3-1 record, facing off against our ace and Kodai Senga, who's 3-2 on the year with 1.38 on the ERA. Now, here are the key notes, everybody. The Diamondbacks are a good team. We know this. They are one of the better offenses in all Major League Baseball. The Mets have also done a very good job on... I shouldn't even say very good job. The Mets didn't take nearly enough of an advantage, rather, in their back-to-back losses to the Diamondbacks in a one-run game where they went 0 for 10, mind you, with runners in scoring position, left 12 to 13 on base, and then dropped the following game there 4-2 or so, just an absolute abysmal offensive showing. And that was, mind you, when the Diamondbacks didn't even have Ketel Marte at the time. So the Mets not taking enough of advantage of still a somewhat injured Diamondbacks team frustrates me. Corbin Burns is not pitching in the series when he was otherwise originally slated to for game 2 because he went down with shoulder inflammation. So that is why you're seeing Ryan Nelson, Gallen, and Merrill Kelly in there versus having Corbin Burns in game 1 or game 2 of this matchup. And then you add in the bullpen, right? The bullpen from the Diamondbacks got absolutely worked yesterday in their 11-9 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. They had a sizable lead early. The Phillies rallied all the way back for the most part, and then they still won in the end, the Diamondbacks, but not before having their bullpen taxed. And I know the Mets are coming off of a doubleheader, so it isn't much better for them, but the point is that this bullpen is very susceptible to being worked on by this Mets team. And not only do they need to pounce on the bullpen, but this Mets team, and I cannot emphasize it enough, needs to hit with runners in scoring position. We can sit here and nitpick certain Carlos Mendoza bullpen decisions all day. We can sit here and nitpick individual player performances all day, especially batters 4 through 6, so the Marte/Winker DH spots, the Nimos and the Vientoses of the world have been the glaring holes right now in the heart of the order. The top of the lineup hasn't been the problem. The bottom of the lineup really has been the problem. It has been that big, meaty order 4 through 6, which has been their greatest demise of runners in scoring position. They need to be better, everybody, because as I relayed in our content that dropped earlier, and I will relay it here once more, everybody, in 6 of the last 7 Mets losses, they've lost by just 1 run. Against the Minnesota Twins, 4-3 loss, 3 for 12 runners in scoring position, and they left a whopping 9 on base. Their 5-4 loss to the Nationals in a walk-off fashion, because of course they did, 2 for 6 with runners in scoring position and 5 left on base. Another walk-off loss to the Washington Nationals, 8-7, 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position and had 8 left on base. The Diamondbacks, 4-3 loss there, 0 for 10 that I mentioned with 13 left on base. 4-2, Diamondbacks lost. No guys were in scoring position, but the Mets still went 0 for 2 and left 7 on base. Then the Cardinals series just this past day, game 1 loss there, and the doubleheader 6-5, 3 for 15 with runners in scoring position and 12 left on base. Then the 5-4 loss. Of course they lost both games by 1 run yesterday, 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position, 10 left on base. So to conclude everything here, everybody, how are the Mets going to win this series against the Arizona Diamondbacks? Say it with me. They need to hit with runners in scoring position. I'm not asking them to bat 500. I'm not even asking them to bat 350. I'm just asking them to bat in the range of 250 to 300 just every now and then with runners in scoring position. And is that so hard to ask? We get guys on base every single inning. So I understand that these numbers get a little inflated because the Mets are on-base gods. They have been this year. They get on base what feels like every single inning. But the problem has been this continued philosophy of just not driving in runs the way you need to with runners in scoring position. So that is something that I hope to see change sooner rather than later. Because if it doesn't, then we're going to find ourselves naturally having a problem, folks. But before we get out of here, before we wrap up this video, I do have some exciting news to share with each and every one of you. And I've already relayed that a little bit so far in previous content, but I'm going to do again right here, right now, because as many of you guys know, but I'll say it once more, we have a big event coming, folks. Yes, you see right here, Wardy Day is officially happening at Citi Field. August 1st, fireworks night, the day after the MLB trade deadline, where we may have some new guys on the block to perform well for this Mets team and make their debuts that same game. And your guy Wardy is going to be hanging out with exclusive Mets fans that go out of their way to seek what we're doing here for Wardy Day. And all you guys need to do to get involved, which is going to have you getting an $18 drink voucher, we're all going to be hanging out together in a lounge setting there in the top left field lounge with the bar right there. They're not traditional seats. They're actual booth type seats that are really nice. They're orange and they're blue color coordination, and we can get up, walk around in this lounge area outside. It's so nice. It's only been there for two and a half years, I believe, since they originally built it there under the Steve Cohen regime. And I absolutely love everything about it. And I cannot wait to hang out with you guys at Citi Field because it's fireworks night. You get a drink voucher, and you guys are going to get early on-field access with your guy Wardy to take a group photo at minimum. So if you guys would like to get added to our pre-sale priority list, because I've already emailed a bunch of you guys, and the tickets are going out fast. We already have, if I'm not mistaken, north of 60 people on the pre-sale list already, and that is not far off from the amount of tickets that we're actively working with. So these are going to go very, very fast. We've already had a bunch off the shelf arrays since we unrolled the initial pre-sale for people that emailed me over this past month, but we're doing it once more for the remainder of the week here, everybody, and all you guys need to do to get added to the pre-sale, in which you will then be emailed by yours truly here, the official event details, ticket prices, and for you guys to purchase said tickets, click the link down below in the description that you guys will see. That's going to be a form for you guys to fill out right there. It's going to be a Google Doc. It's going to say to fill out your name and the amount of tickets you'd have interest in, and that's it. It's that easy. It's that simple. And a week from now, we are officially going to be going public with this for everyone to, in fact, take part in this. But I want to give you guys early dibs to anyone that wants to get on the pre-sale priority list, because like I said, these tickets are going fast. I'm not exactly sure just how many we're going to have left by the time that we go public. So feel free to check it out. Link down below in the description. Our first official game together, Mets fans, at Citi Field, and I cannot wait to see you guys there. Thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later on tonight for post-game coverage at minimum, as long as the Mets have a solid baseball game to be had there late night on the East Coast between themselves and the Snakes. Thank you guys again, as always, no matter what. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.